you.
This is what it feels like.
Can you hear me now? I definitely have
Thank you all for
dreamt
trying.
of gene editing a salamander into my own genetics at some point. Chop off that arm and have it grow back? Heck yeah. But is that gonna make me want to cull off everybody else? No.
No,
Well, did you watch Gattaca? Have you not seen the movie? Like in Gattaca, what happens is people.
I haven't seen that.
Okay, so in Gattaca, and I'm not going to ruin it for you because I'm going to make you watch it or else. But if you see,
it's okay. I want you to ruin it, so I'll watch it better.
It's huge. It's huge. It's huge. Gore Vidal's in it, and he's dreamy. So the point of this movie, though, is that you go through getting the evolutionary changes that are beneficial for corporations. Right? You got a six-fingered man, so he can play the piano better. And if people can't get the jobs, then they lose the jobs. That's what Gattaca's about. Kurt, we lost you right as you were making your eloquent soliloquy.
That's the power of cats. The cat did it.
Yeah. Sorry if my internet is doing its little thing again, but I don't think consciousness might have this weird relationship with our genetics where there's aspects of it that we are totally unaware of. So for this entire time, it's been survival of the fittest. So if we select ourselves to all be 15 feet tall, there's part of our biology that probably isn't prepared for that. So I don't know if gene editing has the promise that we think it does. So I don't think, there's a whole variety of outcomes that could come out of it, but everything does seem to develop a certain type of symbiotic relationship no matter what changes we do something. Say with plastics, it's now we've thrown so much plastic into the earth that there are certain microbes that are starting to digest it and eat it and stuff. I'm not saying that's a great thing, but it does make you think okay, how is our intervention in our own DNA going to suddenly become the new norm, and how is our biology going to adjust around that? I guess that's the best thing I could say.
Cough, cough, jab, cough, cough, jab, cough, cough. The jab.
No jab, please. No jab.
Oh, boy.
Okay, I think the only way it could lead to a culling of any kind is if we leave the CRISPR editing up to AI or something. We create some algorithm that actually has the, I guess, kind of authority to set the standard of this is the way the genome should look. But if we leave that up to machines, then it's basically machines deciding what our optimal traits are. And then when that happens, that's when it's who's to say they're not going to say, oh yeah, by the way, you should create an army of elite super soldiers just because it's going to keep the world safe. And somehow they happen to be used for all sorts of weird things.
See, I feel like that's way more likely for humans.
Corey Good's story isn't true about super soldiers, is what you're saying?
Don't do it. You're gonna get me in trouble. I think that with the idea of human genetic engineering, like Gattaca says, the idea that you're going to pick what do you think is a good evolutionary change? Give me an example of something that you would
photosynthesis. I would make humans have the ability to have photosynthesis, just to be able to.
All right.
So breatharian.
So basically, if everyone had photosynthesis, it would probably mean that we wouldn't have to eat anything else, right? We wouldn't have to murder. Grow plants,
everything.
So that would disrupt the economy, right?
And it would probably keep our bodies alkaline, so we live longer.
The people that are most likely to stop that from happening are not AI who wants
food
to make
companies like Kellogg's.
Food companies, it's corporation states.
They would fucking assassinate you.
I think humans are more likely to have a problem with disruption, technological disruption, than technology. Technology is all about upgrades.
So then, in that context, let's look at we're not just talking about food companies. There has to be the top dog of top dogs, and I think that's the military-industrial complex, right?
Right.
Even agriculture falls under their jurisdiction, manufacturing, everything.
You read this article, China and America and Russia creating super soldiers. They've put tardigrades into human DNA and the super soldier DNA, of course, right, to create the ultimate super soldiers. These things have been going on for at least 20 years, probably since 2003. I mean, the first clonings in 1989, right?
Why would they? Why would they do
cloning? I think they use a lot of buzzwords on these things, and of course.
So tardigrades are super soldiers already, right? They can live in vacuums of space or in a volcano or any sort of circumstance. So making us super strong, right? So the thing is, you need to raise these people already. So by the time you know about this, they're already 18, 25 years old. This is the Clone Wars in Star Wars. These people live on islands and things that are owned by the U.S. military or in private corporation owned islands, but they're isolated from you. And then all of a sudden,
in this discussion, we're kind of presuming that the audience already has maybe what would be considered an American high school education about what the genome is and how it differs between a bacteria, a eukaryote, and then a multi-celled organism like us, where we kind of have this repository of information that not only has transcriptase enzymes that will pull the code off of it as it rips apart the DNA and puts it back together. It then has like a self fact-checking mechanism. There's other enzymes that go through. And it would seem, though, as we try to edit our own genome with CRISPR, there may be a mechanism where it only occurs through like one flush, one reproduction of the whatever cell it is within us. It's constantly being renewed. But then in the next iteration, the next go through, we have it's not like the question maybe is it an impenetrable wall, that it's like a firewall on the database of our genome, that despite our best efforts, if God is anywhere trying to prevent us from playing God, that would be the threshold at which he doesn't have to. He can give humanity free will and the ability to manipulate all this technology because he built a system with redundancies that was meant to lock us out.
If you can beat Twist bioscience, I would be God. I'm really interested to see. Twist
and the same way, would we be here if our genome was susceptible to changes that way? Because we would all be getting cancer all the time. And in reality, we are all getting cancer all the time, but we have other mechanisms built in that usually destroy those cells and prevent them from creating large-scale tumors or metastases.
Download Twist's promoter CAD program and check out what they know. And this is, I'm talking about I have barely played with this since AI has happened, so I can only imagine how crazy Twist is now. But the promoter CAD genome compiler programs that they have are incredible. And what you do is order now means they'll print the cells with the DNA you had compiled and send it to you like you had a CD printed, or you made a printing.
I hope this is a joke.
No, it's real, bro.
I mean, I know it's like kind of real, like CRISPR is kind of real.
It's fully real. It's fully real. What you can do is you can put fluorescent genes in an algae plant and have a lava lamp that you just turn upside down, right? Get your friends together, build a single project. Some of these can be done way cheaper. But
the thing is, the Spanish flu, the code for the Spanish flu exists. So what if you send them the code for a virus that is known to you're telling me they're gonna print it in some goo and send it to you?
For the most part, they are probably not going to help you do anything that would be,
harmful.
Well, you have I wouldn't say that, because obviously some of these things would be harmful, but they make sure you're a reliable, trustworthy person probably before you can print something like that.
And we already know send you goo.
But we already know it's very possible to print super strains of fucking smallpox or anthrax or a combination.
I could probably take match heads and a tennis ball.
What do you mean?
All right, what I really mean is, okay, from what I understand from an idiot's perspective, from what my limited understanding knows, that there's a machine out there that it's like a 3D printer, but for proteins. And apparently this thing could create viruses.
Okay, but the nanobots exist on that scale, and they're called naturally occurring things within our own cells. And from my basic understanding of physics and chemistry and the scale of things, unless there are, you can imprint a genome into E. coli to make it spit out what's it called, insulin.
That's great.
Yeah. There, you're monkeying with something down to the genetic level. But
you've seen the project we did
with any amount of accuracy or precision or reproducibility, link together individual nucleotides into a string that was thousands of characters long without an error is preposterous. It's not something that's feasible. It's like saying we're going to send. I don't know. It's not a reasonable thing to. But the average person doesn't understand that, and so they put in news items that scientists have declared that they can print genomes. And again, if that were actually true, we'd all be so fucked. So the reason that it's not true is just fundamentally it doesn't even really make sense. And
I don't necessarily agree. Okay, so this is obviously, to your point, here's a printer from BioCurious that we made using floppy and CD stepper motors that allows you to print into coli, right? And you can arrange something in a pattern. But the thing is, what biomimicry allows you to do is set up reactions that you can expect to happen. So if you have something that and you can anticipate, like a Chekhov chemical reaction will occur, and then that's going to lead something to be able to produce food that it can eat. Like this is exactly the same way as like culturing or something. So the next thing is, can you make chemical explosions at a small enough level to trigger and agitate ribonucleic acid? Well, we can obviously adjust pH balances and we can produce metabolism. So yeah, we can probably, and I think people have done this, use nanopore systems to print in real time genetic data. Now that could take a lifetime. So obviously that's not like a viable way to do it, like to print genetically.
Well, see, here's a way to get around it. It's just like NASA. You're going to give me how many billions of dollars, and what is going to confirm the reality that you're trying to get me to research? So all you need is someone who, because once you print the genome, you have to then send it to someone who's going to sequence it to either confirm or deny the results, right? So
yeah,
as long as you control the computer readout on both ends, and it says like waiting for results, and then it turns green, and yep, okay,
well,
it's
you
done.
usually
You
have
want
to
send
get
the sample to my friend, and he'll confirm the
those
results so that the billions of dollars or whatever that are
yeah,
flowing
true. But the way you do those tests, you have like an independent group, and they have to run.
You gotta run
tests.
simulations, right? Basically, from what I'm guessing is, and you know what's funny?
After
it's like
you photograph and do a telomere extraction.
Yeah, the whole prominence of like quote unquote AI, which are just like language models. I think that really eclipsed like quantum computing, for example, which I think like the real big deal about quantum computing is it could run those kinds of simulations like at a very like an inconceivable rate, apparently. So I think I think that's like, what is it? That's
well,
like
and then the threat with quantum computing was that would become inexpensive to run such simulations, because what you're saying is those simulations can be run on supercomputers of traditional design. So if someone had access to this massive data processing centers and through these massive data pipelines, they may or may not want people to know that they have these. And so what they're going to call them is quantum computers, and they don't work all the time. But what data is it that you need us to crunch? And again, quantum computing is another one of these things that, in my opinion, doesn't exist. It doesn't even really make sense. And it's a nice, fun thought exercise. And when you have a lot of people,
well, it's also
running. Not to trust doctors. We're still trusting scientists a lot, and not just to tell us what's true and what's safe or isn't, but to even be the arbiters of.
Raphael, act like you know 26, asking a decent question. Where did all the processing power for these protein fold simulations end up at? I don't know exactly if you mean like the quantum computers that did the simulations, or what we learned about protein fold mechanics. But what's interesting about that is from that we learned how protein folds work, right? And so from that we can store data through proteins. What's up, bro?
Sorry, talking to family.
It would have been better if he was just doing that as an interjection.
I thought that was cool too. Yeah, I was like, whoa, nice pants, by the way. Yeah. Yeah, they're colorful. No, but I just think that you could have a problem.
It's like nanobots. Every 10 years there'd be another TED talk talking about the promise of nanobots, until there was a TED talk about how there was a TED talk every 10 years about the promise of nanobots, and it's really just a way to scam people out of money that are relying on you a little too much for their own intellect.
Well, I feel like we learned from the simulations how data is stored in proteins, which is why we're able to do things in better ways, because there's other ways that we can put information in a mechanical fold than we've ever thought, because we're always thinking about something rolling up, but it makes way more sense to have folds, and you can have multiple folds that intertwine in different ways. So we learned about kinds of geometry we hadn't learned about before, which will make it possible for us to use proteins to store data, and that's cool, right? I think that's the future is like biological mechanical computers, right? That's the better system, because chemical computers.
What do you mean by folds? When you said folds, what do you mean?
So look at an amino acid fold. Let me show you like an animation really quickly of how cool they are, because they're so weird, right?
They might have activation sites, that sort of thing. So the protein is relatively useless and might be abundant in our system, but just inert and inactive. And then as soon as something else gloms onto one part of it, it makes the whole thing fold into a certain shape, where it becomes a nanobot. It becomes an enzyme instead of just a protein.
Yeah, I'll show you another example. These
and
are
an
really
enzyme in a non-biological setting. You can have a reaction, and you can add a certain type of metal dust to it, and then the reaction will go 10 times as fast. It might release a lot of heat, but you might sit there waiting for this reaction to occur because it's in certain proportions and ratios within a beaker of fluid. But then as soon as you add a catalyst,
okay, because it all clicks together into like a very small space.
And
Yeah,
Celtic
and it
knots,
can
some
do.
people say that information was known by the ancients in the way that they, the Celtic knots.
Yeah, there's a
were
really good example of that.
representations
Here's the one, the complex.
Wow. Yeah.
They're like
That looks just like
squelchies.
a Celtic knot.
Yeah, so this is another reason why, like, if you could just skip the first few math classes at school and get to the interesting stuff, you're like, oh my god, it's like the math teachers are on acid, but they really don't want you to know how cool it is. And
By the way,
like,
go Celtics! They just closed out the series.
oh yeah, no. Now I'm gonna be staring at proteins for a while. I mean, like, I can literally
So if
stare
you
at
a very
proteins.
interesting one, if you
I'll
look
tell
up titanite, which is the largest protein in the human body, and I was trying to do some calculation that what is the surface area of titanite if it wasn't all folded up on itself and you spread it out over one layer, it's almost one molecule that unfolds to a matter of like square inches, I believe, if not something.
It's huge, yeah.
If you unfold DNA, doesn't it go like all the way to the sun or something like that? Like, I can't remember, but
that's the other thing is DNA is even smaller. So like what you have with DNA on like DNA helix is you have explosions that are happening that are different colors. And so every time the explosion occurs, it tells the next that explosion kind of vibrates the next particles there. So like the adenine might have like a more purple explosion, and then that is made by a chemical that's like more phosphorant or something, and then that's recorded.
To clarify, you're using colors like the way you were using at the beginning of the stream. The way what is light? What is light? And is it electricity? Is it a photon? And it's energy emanating, and you could call radio waves a certain type of light.
But this is another reason why I believe in.
Yeah, there's kind of. Oh, go ahead.
No, sorry. I was just saying this is why I believe in corpuscles, because the idea that light is actually associated with the material it's being made from. You can think of like Tesla's invention of the neon lights, right? And how they're different from Edison's bulbs and why they're better, right? And it's a big part of it is the idea that they're charged particles.
In the human body, there's ATP and NAD, which or ADP and NAD, which grab NADH or ATP. It adds a third phosphate group, and when they're molecules that easily break. So they're types of proteins that when they get close to a reaction that kind of is supposed to happen because of the statistical ratio and concentration of certain things within the cellular membrane, it needs ATP to come by and like fart electricity on it, essentially, like Andres. And it needs to be either purple or blue or green electricity farting at this other set of molecules so that it zaps it in the right way.
But it's like a code. It's like it only. So like it only like reacts to the code. Basically,
it's literally a frequency.
If one leaves like a blast of this color, then the color is made by the actual chemical itself. Then it's recorded, and then so you have DNA as a system of mechanical recording. So the explosions that are happening are in real time, which are telling it what to do in the future, and it's holding on to data as it's doing it because it wants to make sure that it can combine. And then when it needs to, it combines with more data because it starts to lose its elasticity, and that's when it produces.
This reminds me of the book A Wrinkle in Time, or
like it's memory.
Yeah, memory. So genetics are memory. Genetics are memory. Yeah.
And down at the scale, at some point, the characters in A Wrinkle in Time. I think Oprah was in one of the books that in the movie where they made
the blacked version of it.
But they shrink down to the size of being inside of a individual human cell. And at one point, there's like everyone braces for an earthquake, which happens every like 10 days, which is the heart beating. And everything kind of slows down when you get into that. It's kind of the quantum space or that micro, the angstrom level space. You're not quite at the Planck barrier at that point, but the speed with which a chromosome and a ribosome interact in order to copy DNA happens at the rate of thousands of reactions per second. And each one of those reactions has to be activated by a separate boost of ATP. That's
so amazing.
Been energized because your mitochondria have a cascade of things embedded in the cellular wall that allow for oxidative phosphorylation, which allows you the oxygen you're breathing through your blood getting into the cells and then acting as an oxidizer to kind of pull an electron out of something in a forceful way to give it to something that loses it more easily and then becomes useful. And the amount of ATP we have, I think it was calculated in the pounds. It's something that our body makes pounds of, and it's constantly being recycled between ADP and ATP. So there's this energetic loop in our body. When you take what is creatine? It's supposed to affect the amount of ATP your body is able to produce and store, and you kind of have a certain amount of ADP and ATP, but every second your body uses like a full pound of it and recycles it.
So basically, as you use it up, you make more. So it takes, I forget the number now, but it's like someone will tell us in the chat. It's like 2 are broken and then 46 are made or something like that. So you end up with like 43. I forget. I'm sorry. But it's like, the Trinity DNA, that's a good fizzle for us is good. It's pretty important. And it's not just that, it's a really cool mechanical, like it reminds me of the Chinese self-making train. Like it gets on the rail track and it continues to make rail.
Yeah.
But it requires you to get all this. You need to eat like carbohydrates, you need hydrogen, like these things like that. They tell you that in school. It's probably not true, All
right. I was also thinking. I mean, to me, the two freakiest elements of reality. It's like there's light and then there's sound, and as far as like sound goes, I do think like sound functions in a very similar way to light in the sense that there's a spectrum, there's a frequency spectrum, and it modulates according to it. And our own biological senses can only pick up a certain limited amount of that frequency when it comes to light or sound. Do you think it's possible that like you could use specific frequencies of sound to say, I don't know, cure cancer or
definitely, yeah. You know about Royal Rife? Royal Rife is the guy who invented, he just rediscovered sound healing technology. So he's got a machine, and there's actually Matt Rife, who we know, who makes Rife cannons, and the idea of producing specific frequencies. Well, they're using it.
Would it be like combinations? Would it be like combinations of frequencies, or just one? Or
so there's a combination. There's different kinds of frequencies. What's really interesting is when you look at the like Notre Dame windows and you look at climatic patterns. Have you ever put like subwoofer sand and you see the patterns it makes when you play a tone on a subwoofer?
Yeah.
Subwoofer kymatics. So the thing is, if you play certain tones,
cymatics is great. Like, when you put like sand on a sheet and then when you vibrate.
So compare that to the Notre Dame windows, and what you find is a lot of these churches have particular tones they want you to play, and those particular tones are all associated with like solfeggio frequencies, which have been found to heal. Not just for hippies, but like the medical science are using these to sonicate tumors, right?
Also look into this. This is gonna get weird.
Sorry.
I was gonna say, I just want to add this real quick before anything. Just gonna get real weird, but also look into like crop circles and cymatics.
Oh God, right?
And you're gonna see a very weird. It's really cool. It's really cool. I like it.
So I wanted to say, if I can return really quick to the original question that Chris asked, but I just had like kind of like an overarching like thought on like maybe the sky view on it, is that my intuition is that with how you were saying, will there be a culling of people, like the lesser people because of the genetics, and just the way that I picture it in my head playing out is that there'll actually be a culling, but not of the like lesser genetic people, the people that don't use CRISPR, that don't edit their genes, but it will be the first people to do it, because there will be so many unforeseen consequences of what they're doing, because they're not going to select for what nature would necessarily select for. They're not informed by that. So what's going to happen, in my opinion, I mean, this is just me guessing, like I don't know, but that's just kind of what I'm going for, is that they're going to actually make up really bad mistakes. It might actually be really cool eventually in the future, once we're kind of more in harmony with the body, with nature, and like we know what to edit for and how to edit for, and we get those but they're going to be guinea pigs, and it's going to be sad.
I agree. Unless people are not trying to evolve like nature, otherwise they would all want to be crabs. So clearly there's something wrong. I agree.
Wait. And the first time that CRISPR was actually used on people for it was like kids that were about to have cancer, that had cancer. They got, it kind of worked for a while, and then they got even worse cancer that was directly related to the CRISPR, because it did.
Wow.
The site where the CRISPR was supposed to kind of not like, I don't think these CRISPR, things, they actually go around and change everything.
I don't know that whole story. So when I talked to one of the doctors who had known, what's his name? He Jian-Q, right? Who had done the CRISPR baby. It wasn't cancer, as I recall, it was AIDS, HIV virus. But they there's been some issues. He was arrested. He had his entire medical life destroyed for
you
doing
can't
it.
let the poor people have that.
Yeah,
No.
like he cured AIDS in a baby. And so what happened to CRISPR baby shocked the world. It investigates. But what happened to the babies? The babies are said to be healthy toddlers. As far as I know, I'd like to know more. If there's any information that these CRISPR babies are not healthy, anyone who knows that, please tell me. From anything I've heard, that they're doing okay. But
well, I do know like one, maybe two examples of like test tube babies that are like physically they're pristine, but apparently they're into some like really dark shit. You know, like I know there's one SoundCloud rapper who's in jail for
just how many test tube babies do you know?
Just that one. Oh wait, no, there's two.
So like
there's
how
two.
many?
No,
how
I
many
know
people
I know one that's
I
know one test tube baby. I know one test tube baby that's in jail. I know one that's in jail and one that committed suicide. So I don't know. That's 2 for 2.
Hey,
so.
that's 100% of fucked up shit. That's 100%.
Babies don't know that they were test tube. Okay. They don't know.
Okay.
For all you know, that I was born out of an incubator, and I don't know.
I don't know. How am I doing? Yeah, fair enough.
As soon as you leave your parents' arms, they take you to another room, and they could swap us all. We could all be plants from another civilization,
But that's what happened to me.
The scientist in me wants to just like cringe on behalf of like all the other scientists when you ask that question and get answered, because you're talking about, can sound frequencies be used for healing, and then you immediately take it to the place of, can it cure something like cancer? Now,
I'm
measure
sorry.
that.
I'm sorry. Like I wasn't trying
but that's
to, like,
the natural. That's the natural.
Because that's the worst.
We want to know. We need answers for cancer.
Think about this though. Think about what about the things that people deal with on a daily basis that can be measured more readily, like mood and headache and focus and sleep. And so if there's a sound frequency that comes on your little noise machine that's a deep bass note, because your technology has been experimenting with you, so to speak, since birth even, and imprinting upon you certain type of predispositions to stay in deep sleep and not be disturbed by noises from outside your window or on the street or your phone buzzing, unless that it's just, it's and those types of things can be measured without experimenting on people and either saying you must forsake life. Because when you're talking about cancer versus other treatments, are you just going to use sound frequencies and then
or
you're dealing with life and death things?
I didn't do my thing yet for terror. Chris, I got a question for you though. Okay,
what up?
Because I've done this before, but like I feel like you haven't done this yet. So like when you think about your senses, how many senses do you think you have? Right. Like 5 or 6 usually people think, you think about how many senses, something like that usually.
Sure. Yeah, that's generally the number.
You got your sight, your sound, but your sight is based on photons hitting drums in your eyes. They're the same as your ears, right? Your ears are getting drums, they're being hit. So your ears and your eyes are both touch-based senses.
Yes.
And
that's what you're saying.
Your tongue and your nose is touch-based senses. At a certain point, everything is a touch-based sense, right?
It's vibration.
So really you just have touch and vibration, because you can't actually electrostatic. You can't actually touch anything.
No.
So it's a really interesting thing.
I mean, if you look at
there's
matter
space in between everything, is that what you're saying? Like
there's
space. Little space.
All empty space. Okay,
right.
But by the way, Yoga Poser, aside from as far as the frequency question goes, I could present a different one that's divorced from like medicine or cancer and stuff. Like, do you guys think it would be possible if we could figure out, if we've mastered the sound spectrum to such a degree where we could emit certain frequencies that'll make like really, really heavy objects just extremely easy to move, like
yeah, like you mean like military equipment that blows up walls of concrete, of course. I mean, or you mean like Tesla's sound, what's it called?
I gotta go for a minute, I'll be right back. Sorry.
Tesla.
So from a physics standpoint, going really fast underwater, and you're talking about traveling sound through a table or through water moves faster than through air, whereas light is slowed down less unless it's going through something as dense as like a diamond.
Well, when someone shatters glass with sound, like a sound, like they play the so like if you look at a glass shattering, a lot of the time what they're doing is they're playing the same. You can record the sound of a glass being ding, like if I just hit it with my finger and I play that sound back at the glass, eventually it will shatter because there's a particular resonance frequency.
So I got a darker question. Aside from like doing good stuff, like when it comes to like having such a mastery as a species over the sound spectrum, do you think it would be possible to say generate very specific frequencies that can make people, I don't know, like feel really nauseous, feel ill.
You mean like active denial systems?
or
Yeah,
aggressive,
active denial systems
or
do
aggressive,
exist.
or like very irritated, agitated,
Right.
maybe depressed,
or
maybe
Active
or
denial systems are
lowered
non-lethal.
inhibitions,
or maybe
active
more
now-
suggestible, maybe more open to suggestion and influence outside.
No,
influence.
but here's you're asking about it from an ill effect, and so this goes back to what I don't want to skip
Raytheon.
over the idea of medicine and sound
Raytheon.
frequencies as something to kind of, because that's not ridiculous. That's, to me, that's not in the realm of quantum computers and that sort of thing, or light speed travel. So addressing things like anxiety, because you're talking, could it be used for mood regulation? And then are there people that can be aware of, it's like even feng shui or interior design can influence people's moods or feelings.
Yes.
And down to, especially if there's large screens in an arena or even in a smaller enclosed space, and then all of a sudden you could probably influence the likelihood that two people are going to get into a personal confrontation based on the types of music and lighting that are in a space. Like,
So it's all very important. I mean,
especially if they're using strobe lights. Yeah.
To me, this is a big deal, because even if the slightest modulation in light or sound can affect your mood, that matters. Because I mean, to me, like, really, when it comes down to like positive and negative spectrums in your experience in life, it's really boiled down to alignment, like alignment of mind, body, and soul, or mind, body, and heart, however you want to put it, like how you think, feel, and act. It's like, is your body and mind and your emotions like at war with each other or not? If it's in alignment, then it's in alignment. Then you're going to be pretty much where you're supposed to be. But like anything that could say, like, you have a device, a technology, or a cultural device, or like a meta concept or an idea that could actively regulate people's emotions the way you want them to. Like, 1 minute I'll make you feel angry when I want you to feel angry. The next minute I'll make you feel horny when I want you to feel horny. The next minute I'll make you feel depressed.
So you mean like binaural entrainment? So yes, binaural entrainment also exists. So with binaural entrainment, you play frequencies from one sound, one frequency in one ear, and then you have another frequency in the other ear. Well, that was a cool picture. I want that picture.
I like this idea, that the concept of playing someone like a fiddle, and before that used to just be done through kind of mentalism and other techniques of subliminal.
You really don't need all this equipment, though.
And
all you need with binaural entrainment is you need to have stereo. And if you're any familiar with stereo, you have sound in one
left and right spectrum. Yeah.
Right. And so what'll happen is you could get dizzy simply by having one sound and the other sound, because you're trying to find an equilibrium, right?
This is Monroe Institute shit.
Yeah. So brain will create 10 hertz entrainment rate in order to compensate for the differential between 400 hertz and 410 hertz. This is a really simple example. You can do this for hours, changing the frequency. There's a great program.
American Time Machine, I believe, he's been experimenting with this.
The theta state, the theta brainwave state.
Purposes.
You can download the open source binaural beat generator project. You can use this to play and set up a map for what you want to see, which will be, it already wants me to download it. It's so eager.
Also, a great example. Sorry, what were you saying? Go ahead.
I was going to say, if for instance you were somehow in control of someone's digital interfaces and could modulate something down to the frequencies coming through their headphones, and you wanted to make sure that they didn't spend 4 hours today listening to podcasts, there's probably something you could do to monkey with the way that the sound came out of their headphones that would just give them a little bit more of a headache or something, or just there's something that's less engaging about it. And the person could fight through it, or it may not.
All it takes
may not be within the range of something that changes.
And that was an early test, right? Like, you've got people, they tested the MP3.
Sound.
Yeah, the MP3 actually caused a lot of trouble, and like Apple kind of downplayed that by changing to the AAC format. And the AAC format actually does have the capacity for off of 5, because everything on the MP3
not even just
5,
format.
0, 5, 0.
What about tuning? That's like a big deal too, because like if everything's like tuned to a specific standard, we're getting locked into a specific part of the frequency at that point, because it's a standard, quote unquote.
But there is a 432 Android and iOS app that will take any song.
It's very easy to do. You just got to tune it. You just
got to care. You got to care. Not everybody understands that they should care. I don't know. I feel like people would listen to music a lot more.
That's the 8th hermetic law. The hidden hermetic law is care.
I think this is why Spotify is broken. Like, why people don't care about music at all, and why it's not worth any money to anybody at all. This is why. Because your music doesn't do what, if you go to a concert, You notice that? People like, I didn't even like that song that much, but I heard it and it was amazing, and they like want to buy stuff and like they care more. But you listen to it, like it's kind of broken, man.
So I was listening to a stand-up comedian yesterday, TJ or Connor O'Malley, who's just released yesterday on YouTube, and he brought on an AI assistant to do the what's it called, to do some joke telling for him, and what he said that was scary about AI is not that it was going to fool all of us. It's that whenever any of us go into any of our feeds, be it Instagram and all the way up to Netflix, all the content that we eventually will see will be only in our feeds. And every single Netflix even can modulate the advertising, the label of a candy bar that's in there, and the color of the background in certain scenes, because it's decided that we're more likely to keep watching if the characters have on makeup or don't have on makeup. And it's there's so many variables that it would be very unlikely that two people could tune into the same Netflix program, even let alone their social media feed. And that instead of the perception that we're going there to consume what everyone is consuming, the paradigm at least will be shifted enough so that people understand that everything they see on their devices is kind of customized to manipulate them in a certain way.
Yeah, the overly advertised Netflix algorithm.
The cat understands. I mean, the cat clearly understands.
Yeah.
So with the experimentation you've been doing in American Time Machine, I think this was at least a couple years ago, but I remember you were saying you were experimenting with the offsetting of certain sound frequencies or pacing and in stereo functioning. Were you experimenting with that for a particular reason other than trying to increase the enjoyment, or?
Yeah, that was the main idea, was going for the enjoyment aspect, but like I do think it also produces this. It's just a weird effect. I don't know how else to really put it. It's just it's like I haven't specifically tried just changing to different frequencies for just like the raw track, left ear, right ear, but specifically with having, well, I guess so. I would take like a melody and like I would split up the melody, write the melody first, and then alternate between which side of the stereo that was going on. And then I could take the next phrase and then flip it to the reverse. And there was just like a whole like 40 minutes of like that. And well, it was like, I think the end result is just, it feels hard to process, but it does create, like, if you're in the right mood, I guess it does create a certain like a dimension that I think a lot of people aren't used to.
So would you almost say that it like leads to momentary discombobulation even, or?
Sometimes, yes. Sometimes, absolutely.
So if someone is struggling, you were saying, how can sound frequencies, especially people that come from a musical background like American Time Machine, he's produced something that is so aharmonic perhaps, and then is also messing with the lag time in your brain in its ability to detect it or not detect it. And it's like, so if someone is about to go to the liquor store and buy 3 nips because they just want to feel a little discombobulated and like out of their, what if they practice? What if instead they may still go do that, but first they spend 10 minutes listening to this. I think it was Mozart maybe, there was a specific symphony that when people looked at it on the musical score, said, this is going to sound terrible. This is going to, it's almost like you took music and what it was supposed to be and turned it on its head and did that on purpose. And he was like, yeah. And then, it's something that's difficult to play for a lot of traditional musicians. And, but so as far as how can sound frequencies be used in subliminal ways or in active ways, it sounds like they're, I wonder, is there a certain type of warning? It's like, do not listen to this while operating heavy machinery. it's that intense,
Like, well, like now, like, yeah, I guess some people who have like schizophrenia or whatever, they get their corpus callosum cut, or yeah, I think that's right. I don't know. I might have that backwards, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see what kind of effect that has, because I think for like, neurotypical people, I'll say, that's the communication between the cerebellum is all right, not the corpus callosum. I think it's pretty rapid, and so like there's an aspect of it to where I don't think you really notice completely what's going on. Your brain just kind of adjusts to it, but it is also different. So, but I'm interested to see if there were, any people that had the procedure done, if they listened to anything like that, what kind of effect it would have on them.
I'm not sure that that's a procedure that is still done.
Yeah,
that's essential, but I'm not sure about that.
Could you imagine producing a song that fucking kills people? Like you just accidentally came across this like one specific frequency or a combination of frequencies, and the song just instantly kills people when they listen to it like 30 seconds in. That'd be crazy.
Pink and yellow.
Well, it's like the movie The Ring, where it's like if you watch this, you'll die within 24 hours. Wasn't that the premise of the movie?
Yeah, but with this, it could be like the dim mak kind of thing. It's like, oh, if you listen, it just stops your heart. It causes a chain reaction in your cells, and it just
it makes the little magnets, even in earbuds, vibrate at such a powerful rate that it literally it does the digital lobotomy.
Oh
and
no!
It causes a brain bleed. I mean, these are the types of things where the people that wear big headphones.
Or what if it just permanently calcifies your pineal gland or something, and you just remain unwoke for the rest of the show?
That third eye concept, and if we are affected by frequencies that we can't see or taste or touch or smell, like Andreas was saying, then perhaps we are sensing them. Because when a bird senses which way is north, it doesn't have a compass with an arrow on it. It just has an innate sense of which way it's supposed to be going and aligns itself, and it has to do with tiny magnetic particles within its blood, within its cells. And in theory, some people I saw Veritasium. Do you know this YouTube channel? Anybody?
No. Well,
she's kind of as far as like trying to bring mainstream or science into the mainstream and some more complex concepts.
Well, is she cute?
He's been in the game for like 15 years, so there's something charming about him. He must have Riz or something. But he did an experiment. He went to a university where he had a room with a Faraday cage and then a magnetic field that was induced. And it was either going clockwise, counterclockwise, or still. And then they would put someone in there and then change it either from still to moving clockwise or still to, and just trying to see if people were able to kind of put their hand up at the right time when they felt something, and there was no real explanation. It's like the hairs on the back of their head stand, and it would make sense that certain people, perhaps based on where they were from or a variety of perhaps epigenetic factors or triggers, may be tuned into or more able to sense, and then maybe even be more affected in a positive way or a negative way, where some people, the counterclockwise frequency gave them a sense of vertigo or something, whereas other people
distraught state
cured their headache. So
that's cool
to do these things in a controlled way where we're not talking about long-term effects or things that are difficult to measure. It's not an isolated variable, but ultimately when talking about science, that's what I try to come back to, is the reproducibility and knowability of any of the data. And in ancient Roman times, or like the old education system of the trivium and the quadrium, where there was a certain order in which you learn things, such that the people in the position of designing and executing the experiments had a philosophy that would prevent them from subjecting lots of living beings to these arbitrary conditions that may be detrimental or otherwise. Because the end result isn't knowable or reproducible unless someone simply takes your word for it. Really, it's not, and that's kind of what it's supposed to prevent human experimentation or other types of psychological manipulation. Because the Stanford prison experiments didn't go all that well, and it's clear that despite people's predispositions, they become dehumanized rather quickly and will turn on. Perhaps that's one of our safety mechanisms that we have built in, is that we'll turn on each other if we feel like our safety or life is in danger or something. But
hey guys, really quick, can you tell me how bad the truck noises are? I'm just idling right now.
It's pretty good. I think we got enough echo cancellation or noise cancellation.
Yo, Jack, are you armed, like with a firearm in your truck?
No, it's kind of weird because you go state to state, and I still have to check into the legality of things and how actually people frown or smile upon it. But my understanding is from school, they told me that you kind of shouldn't have an actual firearm itself. Like I might get myself some nunchucks, you know, and some
What about a
mace or
katana?
something.
I can teach
Right,
you how
or a
to use it.
katana. You know, but honestly, like I prefer nunchucks or a staff. You know, katana mean because it hurts you a lot more. You know, like
Yeah, you're gonna
inside,
bleed. You're gonna bleed
it like gets
someone.
you. You know,
Yeah.
so because you go state to state, you go even county to county, and things can change. So I can be fine one moment, but then suddenly I'm screwed because I just went
Do you
to
carry something like a
you
police
know.
baton or whatever?
Sorry.
Do you carry something like bear spray or a police baton?
So far, no.
What
But I do.
big old heavy Book of Mormon, like the 5 one, you know. Like,
That's all I carry so far.
yeah, it's the best.
Yeah, because
Works best. Trust me.
Demons Be Gone is
And if
kind
you-
of.
And if you
Yeah.
had to hit
If you
somebody
take enough
with the
boxing
book,
lessons,
it's the
do you
thickest
have to
one.
register your fists as weapons or no?
Yeah.
See,
Honestly,
that's the thing is that my fists are already pretty effective when
Yeah.
necessary. They're kind of like a thing of last resort though, because I am a.
That's what my
pacifist.
sensei taught me.
I saw Con Air. I know.
You get any chance you can
Right.
to run away from a confrontation means you win. And as Bob Marley would say, he who fight and run
Totally.
away lives to fight another day.
I have
you
like
know?
a totally
Well-
non sequitur thing I wanted to share real quick. Just now, the creator of Fortnite liked my tweet, so I just
Yay.
want to be like,
Well, what was it on?
I just said about my friend Micah, who's the guy who Micah Berninghausen, who worked on Counter-Strike, and he posted this like thing that's going to be used because he's teaching really cool things about nanites and particles, and I was like, this guy is going to actually use it in his class. So I wrote this thing. I said Micah was throwing starfish back into the sea from the beach. Someone laughed and said there were too many starfish littering the shores. Throwing a few starfish back wouldn't make a difference, the naysayer said. It makes a difference to the starfish I throw back into the sea, Micah said.
Dude, you're moving on up. Like
Yeah,
it's
but-
happening now.
Bro,
It's happening.
I don't know.
Well,
They're
this gives me
definitely
hope.
they're definitely figuring out
Dude,
whether
I
they're
gotta
gonna
say,
push me
right,
down.
I gotta say, right when I said that, okay, right when I said that, guess what the counter for live was for the time we've been on? 11111.
Oh,
Yeah,
angels.
right at that moment. That was the moment.
Dang. Don't scare me
Angels
like
be
that.
looking after us. Damn.
I'm not even kidding. The moment I got it out of my mouth, the last, like the period that punctuated it was 11111.
Anyone helping me, I think it's not Google. It's probably Angels.
As like a public service announcement, you know, we're talking about certain frequencies that can be emitted by the devices that we have access to and use now on a daily basis, most people, and whether or not they can be kind of weaponized against us, perhaps, let alone outside of any healing capacity, and whether the manipulation and the experimentation is ethical or logical. So one thing that I heard was that the reason that we all have smartphones in our pockets is that eventually they're going to send us to war with China. And I think China was used kind of as a placeholder, a straw man for this large foreign enemy. And that if we're not careful, the gifts that we're given, instead of using them to improve the quality of lives of elderly people, of people who have diminished senses or capabilities, let alone entertaining ourselves and experiencing the digital, you know, metaverse, so to speak, in a way that is new and exciting and can be collaborative or solo at one's.
I think it's really funny to
wish,
think we're in a
so-
war with China. I was just thinking about that earlier today. It's like in 50 years, will there still be? Because like you understand what I'm saying here. Like 100 years ago, China wasn't really. When we think of China today, we think of the Han China, and there's 300 languages in China. There's 50 ethnicities left, but there used to be a lot more. And even Tibet, and there's the Manchurians, and the Manchurians were in charge, not the Han, but the Manchurians lived like a lot closer to Russia. But they had a flu, and they had this kind of plague that destroyed the Manchurians,
Well,
right?
it's
No,
the
as a
type
foot,
thing
no,
that would be-
just an addendum. If you go to
Yeah.
Tibet, don't expect good food because apparently no, I'm serious. Apparently the altitude is. I just learned a lot about Tibet last night, and apparently the altitude is so high that they just can't have access to good food. Like they have to.
So that's probably why they just like they're Buddhists. They're like, I don't care. Yeah, all right,
Mhm.
that's cool. No, but like in general, the idea that the Chinese are the Chinese is a new idea that we're looking at only really in the last 100 years, 50 years. And if you think about it, 100 years ago, even 110 years ago, we wouldn't have thought of China as being Han Chinese. We would have thought of them as being part of China, of Tartaria, of the whole thing. But we would have thought of the Manchurians, right? A lot of people talk about the Manchurians. They look What happened to Manchurians?
Drive northeast.
Turn left. What happened?
Whenever
to
people
Manchurians?
talk about China and use it as this kind of abstract way to refer to a large group of people, I always kind of say like China. Well, who is China? It's like almost saying the United States. Imagine putting the United States in place of the word China and then talking about it the same way, and it just really doesn't make sense.
And now do that if America was 2,000 years old. You know?
Speaking of which, if we went into Civil War. Unlike what the movie says, I think the West Coast would actually get fucking spanked. All right, like without Tennessee and Florida,
you know,
I think in that
it depends what you think, because you guys have Jersey Shore and we made the Armalite, so just be careful.
Oh, all right. Actually,
well, and are you talking about on a 5-year scale, a 10-year scale, or a 50-year scale? But go ahead.
Let's start within the first, within the 1 year. We'll be lucky if it lasts even 1 year. You know, like
I don't think that it would.
I thought it was interesting because when you were watching it, and they're like saying California and Texas, and I was like, no, like, California, Texas, and Florida.
Like, over my dead body.
Fuck United States. No, that was these are all minority majority states.
I'm saying I think Boston has a bunker that doesn't open. There's like a series of bunkers, and they each don't open for 100 years. And so you could think that you stomped out what was the freedom of someone.
Yes, I am.
Colbert made the joke of, because there's a portal right now between Dublin and New York City, and people are like flashing their tits through it, and, like, playing internet porn up to the portal. But he's going, so what do you get when you mix Dublin and New York City? You kind of get Boston. But something tells me that there would be a group of people that would come out and they would be trained to try to assimilate into whatever is going on around them. It could be kind of a Demolition Man style future. And they would still come out, and there would be certain seeds that they would like reintroduce marijuana and other types of things that if they had been exterminated.
My hypothesis is that what will last is not the hipster in any state. And so in China, like whether or not they're destroyed by not having kids or they're destroyed by a plague like the Manchurians were, China will last longer than the Chinese being what we think of the Chinese being. It won't necessarily be the Han anymore. And this could be, again, like very quickly, we could see, I mean, Nigerians and Africans are in China. It's not impossible to imagine that these ghost cities would be filled someday with other people than the Han. Yeah, and the same thing with Canada.
Do not think Chinese people are cucked.
I didn't say that. I'm just saying that the idea that the Chinese people are the Han is something that the Han tried to do.
But are you saying they're not cucked?
Well, I mean, like,
they make all of our
weird
shit
to me, because when you talk about the Manchus, the Manchus definitely were of the.
They test all their shit on us. Yeah, sorry.
We are Han Chinese. We're just a little taller. That's about it.
Not really. A lot of Han, if you go back, the Manchurians maybe 100 years earlier,
or maybe
300 Manchurians look like you. There are some Manchurians that look like you. There were green-eyed, blue-eyed, red-haired Manchurians.
Yeah,
those
are Kokarians, not.
They were in charge, and then as time went on, things became more and more ethnically mixed.
I guess if we're talking about Mongolians, like there's certain people like
that too. But the Mongolians would say Genghis Khan was redheaded. Agreed.
But with the new popularity of the series Fallout, or the idea we're surface dwellers and we're arguing about the things that happen on the surface, and yet even the recorded history, if we're supposed to believe it or not, it's rather tumultuous, and we're in a period that's rather unique in a part of the world that's somewhat unique. And when they say it's a time where you can love anyone and you can be whoever you want to be, that's not really true everywhere in the world.
Yeah, I know.
Now it's like it's true some places, kind of, but like
the people that believe that a lot typically don't.
But so then there's people who live in bunkers and they choose not to. When things like the pandemic happened, let alone the way people turn on each other, and one half of the town is willing and ready to, enlist the executive branch to round up the other half that does or doesn't test or take a certain injection. Or
do you think it'll be like Lord of the Flies, like in little clusters or something like that? Like,
well, the people below ground, they say, well, that's a fun thing to think about it, and we make movies about it, and it's all these stories, and they choose to live a much more what they feel is a controlled existence, and may eat out of cans, but they believe that the food that they have is enough to last 100 years or 50 years or 20 years or however, and they might come up to resupply sometimes. But the idea of then
so you're talking about people in bunkers.
People,
I thought you were talking about like mole people for a second. I just want to clarify.
First of all, they'll be more.
No, I'm talking about a more organized approach to.
I'm not saying mole people are disorganized.
They could be.
They'll be
I feel like when I picture mole people, though, I picture them being like very, very organized,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
the organized
I feel
people.
like
You know what I mean?
Mole persons might be organized. Mole people might have a bureaucratic nightmare.
And some of them.
What's
take
the
offense to
difference
that
necessarily between
some of
persons
them
and people?
don't like it,
This is a good
so.
question. I feel like on the individual scale, left to their own devices, a mole person might be capable of great things.
Like I really don't want to argue with that, just in case they're listening.
They probably are.
Well,
So I
Super
would.
Mario Brothers is this story about how like what you experience is going as Mario up above, but then there are people that are pushing things up from below all the time. You know?
Oh, this is cool though. I think actually maybe we're looking at it wrong. Like kids should be allowed to become what they want to become, because if you're told like as a grown up, like what do you want to become? Like I want to become a really successful computer engineer. I want my brain to be engineered so I can do. If you told that to a 4-year-old, like no, I want to be a turtle. I want to be a mutant turtle, right? And so
Fuck yeah.
we should go back.
Sorry, I don't know if it's okay if I swear. I don't, like, excuse me if I.
It's technically a faux pas, but what am I going to do? You know,
we're not in the first 10 minutes.
If it's a faux pas, then none of that.
All right, I'll try my best. I mean, the broader the listening base, the better, I suppose, these days. But yeah, I think becoming a mutant turtle is a selective demographic, so it's okay. I don't know. We're talking about literally. I don't even have a problem with becoming Bebop or Rocksteady. You know, I feel bad for them because they didn't know what they were becoming. That's probably the best transhumanist example.
Well, and then the choice is it reversible, right? It's like a haircut, and it might take a little longer to like.
I feel like reversibility is not available to anybody. I can't go back to yesterday, right? That's the thing that people really want.
To me, it's more likely though that when humans go tinkering in the genome, that it's like a big crystal, and when you pull something out, it shatters, and then it just doesn't work, and it either turns into a cancerous type cell that simply is based no longer in specializing from a stem cell and reproducing within a lineage of cells that has descended from one of your stem cells. And instead, what it does is it becomes its own, the point of the organism, the reason that it's successful is because it's simply growing and feeding off of whatever host that it's existing on or in. And I don't know, when people refer to humanity as a parasite, on one hand, like it's an analogy that one can draw. It's just if it's not humans consuming these things,
children
I think it's
can
a much
be
more
considered,
beautiful thing to think about. We are the universe's tool for observing itself.
Children can be considered a parasite until they're old enough to care for their parents. I feel like the human race is immature still. There's probably a point where we can do more for the earth. I honestly think we're getting to that point. I think we can't. Like, if we were to try, we could do more for the earth today than we could have done 1,000 years ago. But at the same time, there are things we could do to make it worse. We seem to be doing that a lot. You know, I'm not just talking about like environmental or like ideological issues. I think the way we think about things is, hey, this technology is disruptive. That could be bad. And that's a really horrible thing. We should be thinking about how bad the system is and how lucky we are that we can disrupt it. And that's never the way I hear it. It's always, oh man, this could ruin jobs of people that work in sweatshops. Like, what about all the people working in sweatshops? Don't you care about their jobs in the sweat? I care about them. I don't care about the jobs in the sweatshops. I want the sweatshops to stop existing, basically. So it's hard to say, okay, we need to constantly protect. What am I protecting? Like, what is the thing here that we're holding on to, that we want to hold on to, that we're, that's a harder question. If we're going to become butterflies, what do we want to remember? Do you think that you would remember if you became a butterfly?
It's an interesting, timely question to ask, because they talk about the Great Reset as though it happens all at once, or that it was something that was preordained, or that is a part of a cyclical happening. But no, it does really feel like with the rapid onset and distribution and proliferation of the technology that we have now, again, they might have understood a lot of things in the past, but the access and diversity that we have right now of these magical Black Mirror tablets and everything. So you're talking about, if you're a butterfly, it goes into a chrysalis, into a kind of cocoon, or like a moth, and for all intents and purposes seems dead, and is so it is a sitting duck for anything that comes along and happens to identify it as calories and could eat it. And somehow it not only survives this phase of vulnerability, it then reemerges as something entirely different than what came before. And perhaps, that diagram of humanity, it's often attributed to Darwin, where you have the great ape, a series of, and they end up upright as mankind. Although, as a side note, Darwin wasn't alive when we discovered, or when Harvard first documented the existence of the great apes being the chimpanzees and gorillas. But it's a side note.
They knew about it beforehand.
But so, right, instead of the projection is then after you learn to crawl, and then you learn to walk, and then you learn that you slither on your belly, and then you crawl, and then you walk, and then you fly. But no, in the flying is the butterfly. But so if we're in this cocoon phase now, where we're getting this grace period, where if we're all kind of sitting ducks to if there's a village of 1,000 people that gets an internet connection and sees any one of our individual places and can figure out a way to get here and home quickly, they could just use the extra resources, So, I don't know. One of these things, like the larger society grows, perhaps our population metrics won't mimic the way other wild populations do, where after a big peak, if we're to believe that there were only 100,000, 100 million people, and only very recently did we get to 1 billion, 2 billion, every other population, let's say it's deer, it's elk, it's bacteria in a dish. Anytime you have a peak like that, it then crashes. It doesn't go up and then level out, or it doesn't go up and level out or then come down slowly. The evidence of the hockey stick is the shit of the hockey stick has nothing to do with global warming or climate change. The hockey stick everyone should be shitting about is if we're to believe that, again, there weren't 500 billion people 50,000 years ago. And then, because usually there's some sort of fluctuation, and then it does eventually arrive at a stable place. It is possible for even two different types of bacteria to exist in the same dish, or a fungi and an algae to coexist, and kind of, even though they both emit things that poison the other organism, they somehow are both able to claim space and maintain life. Not sure where I'm going with this, but if you're going to add in the risk factors of monkeying with our own genome as a last-ditch resort to save the last few people left, again, are we better off relying on our latent genome to have some sort of epigenetic response to stress to allow us to overcome the the adversity we're facing?
Do you guys think it's possible to communicate with your past and future selves?
Well, your future self, for sure. You just write something on your forehead and then go.
There you
look in
go.
the
See,
mirror.
that's one way. But what about your past self? I mean, I argue that, you could do the preliminary things like, oh, I forgive my past self for their mistakes and all that stuff. But then, I think, as you communicate with your future self, who becomes your present self, who becomes your past self, as long as you keep some kind of practice, maybe it could be writing, maybe it could just be an internal dialogue, whatever the fuck. I'm just saying, I do think it's possible that a person can communicate with their past and future selves. And when you're a being that does that, I think you break out of the confines of normal perception of linear time, and you become more of a quote unquote quantum being. And I think that really helps in life too. It has pragmatic value because it does improve how you approach reality.
Well, and Facebook does suggest memories from your past to revisit, and by going live on YouTube, especially on someone else's channel where I don't necessarily have control over whether or not this gets pulled down, it's an especially vulnerable and soul naked experience to capture a version of yourself that is in real time.
Solo, real quick,
it will in real time, recording and being transposed into a digital memory that, in theory, will last a certain amount of time, or not last at all. Andreas could choose to restart his channel and repost all his videos moving forward, or musicians do that all the time.
I think there's also a problem with uniqueness. So we think the exact same self, and you're like, okay, well, let's say a kid knocks down let's say a kid builds a Lego structure and goes to bed. You knock it down in the night, so you put it back together exactly the same way.
Okay,
so the same Lego structure.
No, all right. So before you say that, so this was the initiates version where it's oh yeah, that's a simple part where it's make contact with your past and future self. Well, What if it's like not like that? What if it's not so linear, like a singular conveyor belt? What if like it's not just like, oh, make contact with just your future self? What if it's make contact with your future self that would have joined the army, or your future self that would have joined like like become a priest, or the future self that would have done this? Like you could make contact. I mean,
You
like
could password protect everything.
yeah, the reason why I start with the initial thing, it's like, it's because it's more believable, it's more graspable, where it's like, can you make contact with your future self? Obviously,
well,
yes.
it makes me think of Mr. Beast, because what he did was when he was in his early teens or mid-teens, he made a bunch of videos, and YouTube had a feature where you can publish this video. When do you want to do it? Tomorrow? How about
it's a very powerful thing.
How about 5 years from now? So he published a series of videos that he was going to be confronted with, that went live on his channel. He could have toggled them off, where he was predicting kind of how many subscribers he would have and what he would be doing with his self. And so it's an interesting paradigm how the technology we do have access to allows us to manifest just that, because it's a useful conversation to have, and by kind of bouncing it around in a non-judgmental conversation where no one's trying to be right or wrong about these things, you're just kind of examining.
And it might feel like this is one of those time machine paradox things that actually is answered by practical answers. So like, let's say you go back and you change your earlier self, it's no longer you, but in the same sense, let's say you educate all of these children around you who are already are not you, but you make them closer to the way you want them to be because you've educated them, you've given them the opportunities. So really what you're doing, is you are talking to yourself in the past, because you are everybody. And if you were to talk to yourself, you'd be changed. You'd be more like some of these other people that exist.
Yeah.
So, I think that's a big thing about it, is we think of ourselves as an individual a little too much.
And when it comes to educating the next generation too, I think people that really have grandiose notions of being able to project themselves forward into the future through specific thought patterns, or instead of teaching everyone how to think, you're teaching them specifically what to think about certain things. For children, I think it's very useful to provide certain guide rails. Otherwise, even adults are very impressionable. But I think those types of people are more likely to go into building a curriculum and trying to interact with the administration of said curriculum, and whether it's done digitally, and then monitoring the students' reactions, and trying to, over time, perfect some sort of model that guides people into certain types of either behavior or thought patterns. And it's not really something that you set and forget. It's something that you would want to enact and kind of monitor, and then refine, and then either sell or use yourself, or and either because you think it's best for the world, or it's simply best for yourself, or best for a certain country or model of.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's like service to self versus service to personally, I try to keep a balance of like, what is it? I think it's like 51% service to others and 49% service to self. I think that's like a good ratio to keep.
Yeah, you got to take care of yourself.
Yeah, it's just like 49-51, like that's.
And I don't have any dependents personally, so it's a real luxury to even to give oneself 51%. I get the feeling, as if I ever lucky enough to make the decision to enter into parenthood, that ratio.
Well, I mean, I don't even say like I even live up to that ideal, but to me, like I just imagine like that would be a solid, that's a solid ideal. It's a solid principle to live by. It's a golden ratio, I think. Because it can't be 50-50. That's unreasonable. And like, if you just skew it a little bit, I think that's enough.
It's hard to say, 50-50 is impossible to actually do. You know what I mean?
But you could skew it just enough. Yeah.
To be always sure it's not quite 51% on your side, you can make sure it's 49% on your side.
Just tip it over just a little bit.
Yeah. For the stars, and if you miss, you hit the moon. And to some extent, I excuse the criticism, or not excuse it, but I incorporate when people tell me I come across with my tone or attitude as conceited or kind of know-it-all. And it's like, well, I'm aiming for confidence. And if in the process of aiming for confidence, sometimes I go above, sometimes I go below. That's kind of how I'm monitoring my output most of the time, especially if I'm in the position of teaching yoga as opposed to taking yoga or learning about it from someone else. And on the other hand, I think with my personality, if I aimed just at the middle, and the balance would tend towards me not talking as much. Whereas I was always the kid in class when the teacher kind of would ask a question and wait till someone raised their hand. It's like I was pretty quick on the ball and would try to make sure to be aware of.
Yeah, like, so how does Kurt do it? You know what I mean? Kurt, we all want to be like you. You're clearly thinking about deep thoughts.
I like his cat, like just sleeping.
The
like
cat helps.
The cat's
What's the question?
I just don't even know. I mean, what are you thinking about right now?
I'm taking it all in. Like I'm thinking about the whole time loop, you know, and yeah, time is crazy. No, I don't think of time as any. I don't think of any sort of separate self. I think it's all just, you know, it's just one big circle, and you're just one collection of all that past and future consciousnesses.
Yeah, they say there's a saying that all points in space and time are connected.
Yeah, I can get down with that for sure.
Like the idea that like the past and the future are separate is like an illusion. In the reality, they're all connected.
Precisely. I think
What I would like to see is some sort of chat GPT interface where it could listen to a conversation, even one that was rather scattered in its topics and people were jumping and could handle more than maybe 2 or 3 people, 4 or 5 people, and it would map it with bubbles. And so it would follow the topic of the conversation with heat zones and maps with word clouds. And then when you were done with, instead of just the information of, you know, it's a 2-hour podcast and there's timestamps or not timestamps and topics listed, but somehow you could have that 3D, or that it would be a 2-dimensional visualization. I guess one could make it 3-dimensional, that would somehow be built in real time. Because one could do it by hand, but it would be interesting to see it done automatically.
I know you've been thinking a lot about death, and like death kind of connects to this idea of time travel, because you can't travel beyond your death, you know? And so this idea also of going back is kind of connected with like yesterday's died already, you know? And so today is a new day, and it makes it really hard to connect in some ways in a linear scale, because people want so hard to be able to be, you know, forever. And that I think is a traumatic aspect of, I don't know. What do you think? Death?
I mean, there's the whole stuff about reincarnation, which is its own crazy, insane lore and whatever. It's its own metaverse. I don't know what
and
to
the
call
Baptists
it,
get to water ski in heaven, which is really cool. I mean, it's just like a resort.
But then there's also the prospects of like, you know, maybe humanity just eventually never has to die, you know?
Yeah.
Well, and asking if there's going to be a culling, if there's life extension technology and we don't reproduce at a certain rate, then eventually the culling will happen because of time.
Well,
and the most
all right, the sensible way to do it,
machines that keep themselves alive for 500 years, in effect, win.
And I saw Kurt grip that mic, so I know.
No. So the first thing is to do is to just make a rule, right? A law saying you can't have a kid unless every kid is registered like beforehand. Like you have to sign up to have a kid. It's like me and my partner want to have a child together, and they say, well, how much do you make? You know, what do you provide? What do you do? And then you get reviewed, and it's like, all right, you're approved to have a kid.
Or better yet, like Finland, you just like realize that taxpayers are good. You make them, you force people to have kids, you pay for the kids to be raised, and then now you have taxpayers.
Hold on. So you're saying that we'd be better off giving? I understand that there should be like the village raises a child thing. You're saying the government, though. The government is the one.
Well, they're the ones with the
each
most
country
incentive,
government should
right?
be in control.
I think corporations.
Whether or not
I think
Coca-Cola
has just as much of a reason to produce babies that drink
Kurt
Coca-Cola.
Vonnegut is rolling over in his grave. He had one of his short stories, "Welcome to the Monkey House," about this, where they put something in the water where if a woman wanted to have a child, she had to go to her doctor to get something that deactivated the chemicals that were in the water that caused them all to be infertile.
Let's go look, Kurt.
There were sewer people and rat people who were like trying to do, you know, the underground birth thing. But
all right, Kurt's got that mic. I'm gonna give him a chance.
Hi. It's so awkward when I don't have anything to contribute without, like, I don't know.
Have you heard of Kurt Vonnegut?
You read death books all the time. Buddhism, your death, like you think about it. I heard you.
Okay, death. Yeah, we're on the topic of death. So we talk a lot about transhumanism, and I like just all the time in my personal time, just shitting all over the transhumanists. Like no, that's one thing I think we're getting all wrong, particularly is because I think the whole idea behind the movement of transhumanism is the whole root cause is just fear. And like really, I think there's the whole new age thing, and there's disadvantages of that, but like if you're not afraid of death, then why is death a problem? And I think that's the real question. Why is death even a problem to begin with? It's such a simple question. It sounds so simple that it's stupid, but it's like there's this assumption of like, well, we're just, I guess the answer is like we're pre-programmed to try to defeat death as much as possible. So why resist it? But like,
well, because we miss things when they're gone, and when something's dead, functionally, it is gone.
Yeah, but that's also an assumption, because like if the world that's approaching the world from the materialistic viewpoint. Like if you take away the pure materialism, then that's no longer true inherently. Like if you take things into a spiritual matter, it's like nothing's ever really gone. It's like the Buddhist approach is that essentially there is the emptiness, the emptiness of everything lacking inherent quality, and so everything becomes, we either create meaning, or meaning comes out of everything in relation to everything else. Essentially, that's I say essentially, but it's actually called non-essentialism. But yeah, there's a whole spiel about that. But so death is not something to actually be afraid of. I think it's like that's if you start with the assumption that there definitely is an afterlife, we just don't have the brains that can actually understand it, then
that's
changes the narrative. Sorry, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Well, no, and again, that is a big if. And again, as you're talking about whether or not to be afraid of death, so I would wear a bicycle helmet because I don't want a massive head injury. And then death is also something, if you're really going to get, plowed over by a car, a helmet it's not going to stop you from breaking your neck, But again, so if you start that sentence or that thought with anything other than, well, assuming there's an afterlife, because then what you're really saying is that death, which is marking the end of life, now you're creating this other thing called afterlife, and you're saying, well, but that exists. So the whole life thing that, I don't know, yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to insert that. I was saying that is the alternative viewpoint that is equally disprovable, or equally indisprovable. But yeah, that's what I meant to say by there. I'm not trying to prove anybody that there is an afterlife. I think if anybody makes that assumption,
this is the Korean version of Sam Newsman.
That is so funny. Like everyone's just talking mad fucking shit.
You said Korean Sam Newsman?
He's everywhere. He's famous all over the world, ladies and gentlemen. It's Sam Newsman. Sam Newsman's here. It's been a minute.
They didn't listen, why didn't you guys tell me you were going to turn on the camera?
Oh my God!
So the producers didn't even tell me they were going to turn on the camera.
I'm the worst.
Just go ahead and fired it up. They said, "Oh well, by the way," and next thing you know, I heard Korean
you wear that
Sam
hat.
Newsman
You wear that hat when you're alone, bro.
The breaks.
You wear that hat when you're just like alone in like indoors, bro.
Dude, it's bright in there right now. You need how bright these lights are? I can't even handle it. I want my hat.
It's a good observation, and I was wondering if someone was going to ask about the hat, and the reason why is because it's covering my eyes. Like they say, there's damn lights.
Did you get a haircut recently? You do look good, Sam. It's been a minute. I love you.
It has been a minute. Listen, I thought I was banned from your channel too. I'm banned all over the damn internet.
I thought I was too, buddy. I don't know.
My
Sink or swim these days. Apparently, we're swimming to the surface. We're gonna make.
Well, I always listen. I say that we're all juggling flaming chainsaws underwater in the deep end with no floaties. I feel like that's all of our lives. These are the days of our lives in the deep end with no floaties.
Well, you've been paying attention. What have you been seeing going on here?
Well, listen, forget about what I've been seeing. I've been listening to this conversation. This conversation is amazing. Reincarnation, time, gene therapy, and gene changing. Oh, man. If only you guys could identify as a puppet like me. and then the world would be great. But you're still humans.
Look, we
Yeah,
could,
what's the life?
with
what's
gene
life
therapy, you wouldn't
expectancy of
have
a
to be
puppet?
pink anymore. We could make you white. We could make you Middle Eastern. What color? I mean, maybe all the way towards melanated. I don't know.
I mean, have you ever seen
what's wrong with pink?
It's a condition. In our books, it's a medical condition, and we're going to gene therapy it out of you. You know.
I actually have you ever seen this color on a green screen? Like it just pops. There's something special about that kind of
Pinkism.
magenta pink. I love it.
You're a pinkist.
Yes.
Listen, you wouldn't be the first. Listen, I remember a long time ago, Arn Anderson. Remember Arn Anderson of the Four Horsemen?
Oh God.
One of my first interviews at a convention. Went up to him and I said, "Hey, listen, can I be an honorary horseman?" And then Arn Anderson says, "Well, Sam, anyone can be a horseman, except when you have pink skin."
Wow. Really?
What? Oh my gosh.
Wow.
So you know what? Maybe I should do that gene therapy thing. I'll change my skin pink color, and then I'll become an honorary horse.
Just get enough face tattoos that people can't tell. You know.
Well, hey, I like my pink skin.
I'm a fan.
I think it looks great in the light.
It is nice, but
Damn,
like, what's the life expectancy of a puppet? Like, do you have concerns? Like, do you kind of ever worry about yourself? Like this is like a very human thing. I don't know if it's something you.
Is he going to outlive his Jordans? I don't know.
Well, listen, that's a good point. That's a good point. I should sign the Jordans now. So in case something does happen to me, somebody can just sell them off in my honor.
Now,
right?
Interesting news flash, because we have Sam Newsman here. There was a world leader who was just shot a couple times in public, by the way. And also,
I saw that.
The Tom Brady roast was recent. So Tom Brady, there was some auction where it was $3,600 a signature, but I think the paint pens they were using were a little noxious because by the end, his signature didn't really look like his signature anymore, and a bunch of people were complaining that they paid all this money, for a game used Tom Brady thing that they had already bought for X number of thousands of dollars, and then they were going to get it autographed. wouldn't even certify it because as a way, it's a secret to when you get famous and you have a book and there's a signing. It's a type of cognitive warfare where your enemy will make a sports star who isn't supposed to perform well the next day for gambling reasons. All of a sudden the night before they've got a book signing. And they've got these heavy paint markers, and it's like huffing paint fumes for 4 hours. And everyone else in the room cycles in and out and isn't standing directly over it. But everyone wakes up with kind of a hangover. It's like you're using the wrong kind of glue to glue down your carpet or that sort of thing. And just everyone, it's like a user beware thing. It's something your parents probably won't teach you, but don't huff glue, kids.
Well, what I'll teach you to do is grab the marker that best suits your fancy. I always prefer the blueberry one. What about you guys? How can we go? What's the round table? What was your favorite sniffy
raspberry
marker? Do you have a favorite sniffy marker?
Definitely the
growing
raspberry.
up. Does everyone remember this? There was a
licorice.
I only had the
licorice.
8-pack.
To me, licorice kind of hit, even though it's fucked up. I liked it.
But we all have the same reference point here, where there were a set of markers that supposedly were safe to sniff for kids, and they all smelled like something different and fantastic, right?
Made from petroleum products. They were pretty
Now, what if this is imagine that we were just the first generation of kids that were testing these products out, and who knows if they were actually safe? But we sure did smell those things, didn't we? Oh yeah,
it was mind control.
Oops.
Well, like I said, blueberry is the best. It's always blueberry. And how come nobody likes licorice? What's up with all the licorice hate, guys?
I like
Everybody
real licorice. I feel like
people hate licorice like they hate candy corn.
I feel like
I don't understand it.
I think it's fake stuff. Like at a certain point, they started getting like so far away from the thing. It's like ketchup, right? Ketchup started out as this like ketchup ancient sauce made of mushrooms you put on steak in the Philippines, and then the Heinz turns it into this weird, perishable tomato thing that they can send across.
But it's like it's not tarragon. What's the Italian spice where certain people have it's like your tongue either tastes it or not? Come on, you got smart people here.
What are you talking about? Talking about the cilantro thing with the soap?
Cilantro. Thank you, Andreas. Yes. So I would say that the people's predisposition to liking or not liking cilantro is similar to licorice.
I don't know. I think natural licorice is way different than like red stick or something like that. And you might get sick of corn syrup, and that might change your life.
Like Twizzlers.
Yeah, that might be different than like if I had like actual licorice, right? Like what's actual licorice made of, right? It's like a plant, right? So
well, I also know cilantro is like a key ingredient to make cola. You know, I'm pretty sure.
Dude, all right. Like if someone gave me this and said, "Here's licorice," would you believe it? Like that's the thing. We're so far away from
I
licorice.
barely know her. Sorry.
I mean,
yeah, but
this
have
is
you
a-
ever chewed on mint?
Dude,
Haven't you ever chewed on mint? Have you ever seen mint leaves on the ground and just started chewing them?
I'm pro.
Not that
I'm
I would
pro
know. I
mint.
don't have any teeth.
Oh, it's a brutal thing. isn't
Yes,
it?
to varying rates of success, because just because it looks and tastes like a mint doesn't mean it hasn't rewilded and created some sort of self-defense from the deer chewing on it. But you know,
It does feel like ableism to an extent. Here, let's pop you.
Honeysuckle? People like honeysuckle.
Honeysuckle's legit. That's the thing. So, I mean, aren't you? I guess this kind of question is into things getting so far away from nature. Are there enough people that prefer the synthetic Twizzlers to licorice that you'd be willing to sacrifice the natural licorice? I mean, no one knows it exists basically anymore. It could just be wiped out because there's not enough room to grow it, right? This is what I'm kind of concerned of. Maybe what people are saying with transhumanism, they're worried that like the original thing will be so lost from what the new thing becomes. Is that right?
Wasn't that what Coca-Cola is? I mean, there's no cocaine in your Coca-Cola, right?
Well, there would be cocaine if Coca-Cola is allowed to put cocaine in it.
Yeah,
Here.
you've heard what's it called? The cocaine, Coca-Cola, New Jersey. They actually do use coca leaves to make Coca-Cola still.
it was also.
They
I
just
mean, if you
extract-
drink it, it'll cause stomach cancer, and then people will try to inject it, and it's not proper. And I mean,
They will what they do is they extract the coca, they make it and then they extract the cocaine from the cola syrup, and then they sell that as the only medicinal cocaine in the U.S. It's a New Jersey plant.
and what dentist office will make Novocaine out of that, and they will make other types. There's other molecules you can make by essentially.
So
cracking.
Coca-Cola is still
Right.
cocaine. It's just you don't get the cocaine from the Coca-Cola. You get like the coca leaf extract without the cocaine.
And you know, at one point,
How did
Coca-Cola
we
had the
survive?
opportunity to buy Pepsi,
Yeah.
and
Really?
then they passed on it. They said it was going to be a bad investment, so they
Hmm.
passed on Pepsi.
Guys, admit it though. One thing I think is underrated: the fact that cocaine was distributed by your soda jerk. There was a guy who had a tank of liquid cocaine that he would mix into the fountain drinks that he would serve to children. Okay, we survived this as a species somehow.
We survived.
'cause it
We
didn't
were probably
spread.
doing better, right? Weren't you doing
Like,
better?
the
back
United
then?
States didn't do so great. We had the whole depression thing after. People were really skinny. It's like
Everyone was skinny back then, but
they all talked a little funny now, didn't they? I mean, I don't know, but it's like I think like we should pat ourselves on the back because we still have it. It wasn't a medicine that was like taken away from us, and now it's like Soma or something that it's like we don't know what Soma was because it was too powerful. It was too good. It was.
Well, the bioavailability of most drugs is not very good for puppets. So I don't know if it's like you're gonna have much of a bias.
Well, Yoga said something. He said, pat yourself on the back. You were talking about some things earlier, right before I popped in here. And, you know, sometimes you just have to pat yourself on the back if no one else does. So,
Yo, did you know that at
blow
one point,
yourself a kiss.
at one point, Wonder Bread had to artificially insert nutrients into their bread because during the Depression, people were just sustaining on Wonder Bread, but it wasn't. It was like bleached of all nutrients, so they were getting like blind vitamin deficiency. Yeah, and so Wonder Bread had to like start putting more nutrients in their bread, just so people who were eating it wouldn't, who sustained just off that wouldn't die.
I think it was Milkbone. There's a dog food company that makes these dog treats, and they would come in many flavors, and they stopped making them in many flavors because apparently a lot of old people ended up like relying on that, and someone was either stealing their food stamps or there was just being or poor people. And
do you
then
think
again,
there's like
dogs are always pretty healthy, I mean, when you look at
do you think the like portal thing is like kind of an optics about like real portals that they have, right? Like there's actual portals between like cities, like some Raytheon portal that like if you work at Raytheon, you can walk from the Raytheon headquarters in Dublin through the Raytheon headquarters at New York City and the Raytheon headquarters in Los Angeles. And then this is like kind of like soft disclosure, and they're removing it because they're saying this is why people can't handle it.
That's exactly what it is.
That's some
exactly
that's a very big schizo trigger.
Thank you. I'll take both of those answers as an adamant yes. I don't know, right? Like it seems to me like this is like obviously going to be over in a week, but they made this huge sensation out of this for what reason, right? Like, and they're talking about portals all over the news.
You should have seen the first time they did it. It was with fiber optics, and they like didn't have it regulated, and every like 3 hours, I didn't quite know why, there was a pulse of energy through the system, and it was like a giant laser beam, and everything that was standing in front of the portal just got singed. It was like a giant, but
there's a few things that made me think about that, right? Because I remember when I worked at CNN, like
you've seen the lasers that they have now, though, that come out of
the-
one fiber optic fire. Let alone imagine
Yeah,
a bundle of fiber optic fiber. Okay, but so go ahead.
No, it's good. It's true. I was just thinking about because of that. That reminded me of this was like because of Flight 370 when Flight 370 went missing, and where it was at in like Malaysia's were like this hyper tech capital where they have all this amazing technology. It's where certain companies like Raytheon were working on, and Freescale Semiconductors had like UAP drone self-driving technologies there, and so a lot of people on the plane died. But there was like a hashtag thing, right? Because it was like Flight 370. And 370 was also like a bill that was going on. And it made me think it's interesting because no one's going to be thinking about Bill 370, right? Which I'm trying to remember what it was, but it was like some kind of Patriot Act kind of thing. I forget. I'll find it at some point, but it was messed up. Point is, the same thing with BLM, like Bureau of Land Management was making all of these major court cases in America in the 2019, all this 2017, all this period of time. And you couldn't read about it because BLM is what Bureau of Land Management goes by. And at that time, BLM was like the Black Lives Matter movement that was taking over all the space in Google searches. So you'd have to look so much further and try to remove words and searches. It was really difficult to find.
And the one really weird sync is that Bureau of Land Management was kind of the department that dropped the ball when it came to the whole 40 acres and a mule thing, but that's a separate issue. But
yeah, I mean, Bureau of Land Management's interesting because they're creating a dictatorship. Like they have Napoleonic law, and they don't have to use the regular constitution wherever they're at. And so a lot of
but
these
if you were
things, like
looking for
Iran,
an entity to sue for reparations and you were trying to come up with the modern day equivalent of 40 acres and a mule, well, that was supposed to have been bequeathed to you at a certain time, and it would be BLM is who you need to go after. But
but they're the ones who offered, like Iran Contra wouldn't have happened without Bureau of Land Management, right? Because like they had to produce weapons in California in the desert in reservation lands that only had 6 people. There's a whole thing about how
again, this idea of a portal being a fiber optic or an optical link between two places. We talked in previous episodes about being able to 3D print a house on the moon because we have such powerful lasers here on Earth that if you point them at the moon and trace a square, when we get there will be like some sort of thing to inhabit. And it's also a threat against anyone trying to do something on the moon because we'll just like 3D print a house over you kind of and like turn you into glass with a giant laser. But so imagine those lasers, instead of being pointed up in the Earth, just like being like a spotlight and getting to see like any birds that flew through it would just get incinerated. But we are at the point of Boston is insisting that everything go electrical, and when you have an electrical grid, it's kind of more capable of being toggled on and off, and then could be used to energize a giant reactor that's underneath MIT that no one knows about, or that sort of thing, or power the bunkers that only open every 20 or 50 years, or they got to find a way to siphon off. The Big Dig might be because there is a giant hole underneath Boston that we've like bridged. It's like a viaduct underneath there or something.
What's Sam looking up over there? Look at him. He's just like digging away on the internet. What are you
who got shot, Sam?
Well, no. Listen, I was sitting there. I was just pandering, meandering along, and sitting there typing. You were sitting there talking about, what you were talking about, and I'm just sitting here trying to figure out everything.
But going back to this,
you're like Kurt.
So the backside of the moon is where the people look like Avatar, and when we're talking about, are we allowed to manipulate our own genes, and where we end up resemble anything in the? I think the movies Avatar were released on the backside of the moon, but it was reversed. It was that they were the giant blue people wanted to know what it felt like to be the naked, skinny mole rat apes on Earth, and to be like not to like have to rely on cooperation and innovation and creativity and developing systems of productivity instead of just relying on your brute strength and force of you and your tribe that are able to hunt down and capture enough calories.
I finally almost saw Avatar 2. I watched like about an hour and a half of it, I think, which is like almost half of the first.
How long is it? Like 3 hours?
Oh,
4 hours?
It's like 3 hours. But to do it, to get myself to care enough to watch Avatar 2, I had to watch everything about Avatar 2. I had to be like, okay, I want to watch Planet of the Apes because they use Houdini, which is making all this cool particle effects because I love Unreal Engine. And then to do that, they had to make all this money spent on making that software for Avatar, right? Oh, he's in the middle of the yeah, I get you. But yeah, so Avatar, then you see the behind the scenes and it's ridiculous. It's just like they're spending $1 billion on this like joke of a movie where it's like Waterworld, literally, you know. And he's got what's her name, you know, Sigourney Weaver. He's like, you know what, you're dead. So how about you come back and play a teenager this time? It's super weird. I kind of like the movie though, because now that I'm this invested in caring about this monstrosity of an art project and how much they use ping pong balls and pools to record stuff. You know, I might finish it. Yeah, no, it's not mocap.
It felt like
it's performance capture. Mocap is motion capture, which is missing the E. It has to be emotional. Sorry.
No,
Can I just say, all right, so I kind of remembered what I was thinking about. You know, I was listening to Yoga. He started talking about portals. Next thing you know, he's talking about like lasers on the moon, and I got completely distracted. So when you came to me, I was like, I don't know. I'm lost, trying to wonder whatever the hell he's smoking.
I was all part of the plan.
Along. Good grief. Okay, about the portals now. About the portals. Okay, it was interesting. Because everyone was thinking, like you said, soft disclosure. But of course, the real story behind the story was how long was it going to take before someone in New York flashed someone in Ireland?
Yeah,
I think
come on.
72 hours, I think is what it was.
Longer than I expected.
Yeah, well, yeah, but it was, but hey, it didn't. It you know, I think
what's really shocking, it was like
72.
a cute girl
Right?
instead of like this old homeless man, which is really I expected it to be.
Yeah.
Have you lived in New York?
Man would just start peeing on it. It's like, hey, look.
Man.
I felt
Start
like they
shitting
should
right
know,
there.
like the "He Will Not Divide Us" protests, like how quickly that devolved into just silly shit. Like you remember the Shia LaBeouf, he will not divide us. He will not divide
Theoretically,
us.
that brought so many people together that it kind of
I know. And then it's just
like people were learning math about astronomy, so they could figure out where the flag was located in pictures using Google Maps. Like, pretty great
I just
stuff.
like
happened.
how like Shia LaBeouf literally went schizo after that. He was just so paranoid that people were following him.
Yeah, well,
That he
they
couldn't do
probably
I have
were,
a theory
but they
about
were
him.
some
I
people-
think I have a theory about him. I think he did that on purpose. I think he self-destructed his career. He wanted to get out of the public spotlight, and so he was acting. I think it was like a Kanye West situation.
Why not? Well, then why didn't he just go with Trump then? Like, if you want to really destroy his career, all he'd have to be is like,
No, his life became a living performance piece about what it
It's a good
feels like
question.
to be a celebrity and to have no option for anonymity or privacy, really, in what one is doing. And when he eventually wore a bag over his head, or maybe this is Joaquin Phoenix, who went through something
the
similar.
thing is,
he said,
when
"I'm
you're-
not an artist" or something.
when you're
He said
a
bag
YouTuber
over,
or you're like a Hollywood person, like, so it goes like there's like the A-listers who are like the Illuminati, and then it trickles down until you're getting peed on by Reagan. And I think like after like D-listers, it's like A, B, C, D. E-listers are like these E-line online kind of nonsense. And yeah, like the deal is that nobody's ever going. Like, if you want to get promoted, you have to be part of the left because the corporate like Pride Month thing works that way. So you have to like endorse that, which is cool. Like, do it. In fact, this is why I'm announcing my endorsement of Hillary Clinton. But no, sorry, go ahead. Sorry,
I was saying that was him trying to get with the program, but he didn't want to get with the program.
But
and
the problem is
so
also,
like that was the beginning of his self-destruction. Like after that, he was like, I'm out. I don't want to do this anymore. This whole divide us thing, dude. Like,
because the problem with the right wing thing is because if you're saying, okay, I hate the system, well, guess what? The system's where the money comes from. So if you hate the system, then you're going to be poor, and you're constantly going to be trying to get money from people. And so the right wing thing is to get endorsements from like the most ridiculous places because you're so desperate to have money. So it's actually more dangerous because they're the easiest to buy. Right? Is the person who's not already bought. And the people that are bought, they're kind of just trying not to say stuff, which is very similar to what happens in the Soviet Union. So it's nothing new. If you're an artist, you can do it. If you're not, you're going to lose your promotion, right?
Totally. Like you do have to tell a certain line if you're going to be high up enough. You have to get with the program if you're going to be in the spotlight at all.
Or you don't, but then you have to sell out to somebody, and like there can be worse, man. I've seen some pretty like
what do you mean by that?
Well, like let's say like some of the people that are against like big pharma, right? And so we've seen like Act Like You Know. Remind me the name of the group right now that I'm talking about. That is the medical association, essentially, that's run by like big pharma that's trying to get
WHO or the NHIS. No.
Yeah, like CVS is bought.
NHS.
Like they're all. This is
we just did this. We did this cool thing on Europa where we covered this. Act Like You Know is right there. So tell me the name of the thing. So like, what is it? I'll look it up real quick.
No, all these little spots like CVS, Walgreens, and shit. They're all gonna like start becoming like consolidating and becoming like a multi.
The wellness group. Okay. So the wellness group is this thing where big money is finding this small money, and the small money is like the promoters, but these are like promoters that have said, hey, I'm too cool for the establishment, you know, like I don't trust the establishment. Establishment stops giving them money. And so then what they do is they put money into them and they say, hey, endorse our thing. And then that thing is questionable, right? That's kind of been what we found, is that the wellness group has been associated with why won't you come online and just tell them yourself? Hold on a second. I'll pull this up. Beyond the Maze Substack. Beyond the Maze.
Dr. Drew's on it.
Yeah, some of my friends are too, you know, because this is like, if you worked for Fox or something and CNN and you stop doing what you're told, then you want to do a YouTube channel and they just like bring your algorithm down so you can't see what's going on. Then you're going to end up trying to be part of some group that can help you get more promotion. And they're going to give you money so you can do a better.
Oh, like a secondary path.
Yeah.
Is that? Yeah, I see what you're saying.
There's a recent trend in debates and in bringing on, you know, having one person use their platform not to put their opinion out there, but to act as some sort of intellectual arbiter between two opposing sides. And in the past, there was the great debaters, which isn't just a euphemism, but there were certain topics that would come up in conversation, whether they be societal, social, political, and in every auditorium of every university and every weekend, there would be people kind of strawmanning the extremes of both arguments and kind of hashing it out in public. And it was instead of being a mountain of comments on Twitter or on X, then
so I'm not doing this justice, but Big Pharma, deep connections to intelligence community, including TWC's former chief marketing officer, who brags about having secured over $300 million in contracts for information operations, PSYOP, and intelligence support. There's a lot. We're gonna have to go. I'm gonna have to do it again, Raph. We're gonna have to talk about this like even harder. But just the idea is, you don't need to have the mainstream thing get you the way you think it does. It can go right above that, you know.
Well, I've heard of people that by going under the care of some sort of somewhat convoluted or contrived set of medical interventions, ended up developing a musical career, because at first it was just called like artistic expression and art therapy, and then they ended up capturing something that really helped feed into their ego, and maybe even got to try on a few different personalities or music types before they picked the one that they went public with and built their identity around. And instead of stumbling into fame and notoriety Paris Hilton style or Kim Kardashian style, or achieving fame and stardom and then being torn down like every historical figure ever.
Well, I did decide to go over the 2-hour limit so I could warn you about a group not very well. So I apologize for that. I feel like I could have done a little bit better, but I was trying to remember the whole story there. The point being that you can get in trouble even without sponsorships, but like the best thing to do is to like be independently making videos carelessly, put as little money and effort into your videos as possible, put as much like consistency into your videos, and don't really care about it that way, because otherwise they're going to use that against you your whole life. That's been my experience.
And
but
don't stand next to the wrong person at the bus station, because it's part of a secret social credit score.
Yeah, you be careful at the bus station. I was thinking about that earlier when you're talking about like frequencies, because like our bus station, they started playing all this classical music now, and it really changed the vibe. Like the homeless people, everything is different. But Sam, before we go,
does that like only last for a month?
No, they've been doing it for like over 18 months or a year now, or 2 years. Yeah.
We learned about this in the pandemic, though, as a quick little science nerdy thing that's only 10 seconds long. Our phones emit a series of individual kind of quanta of like 3 or 4 digit numbers that string together and are unique. And then when you're close to someone else, it like records that. And so it's a proximity sensor. And when they were thinking about using it for what's it called with COVID and social distancing, and they could tell whether or not your phones have been within a
And then
certain
they
distance
found out
of
the
each
6
other.
feet thing was just
But,
bullshit.
yeah, anyways.
That
All
they-
right.
Yeah,
they
so
didn't do
outside
any-
of the connotations with the pandemic and the pandemic or the virus, it's an interesting thing to know that your phone is capable of running that type of subject.
Yoga, I'll see you on Sunday. Chris, any last words? And Sam as well. And then maybe Kurt, but I don't know if he really want to. We'll try. We'll see how it goes. Aiden too. God damn it. Just everybody say what you want to say.
Peace and love. Yeah.
See ya.
Wait,
Nice to meet y'all.
Hold on,
and
wait,
speak to
no,
y'all.
wait. He just go peels out. Is that
We
how
might
it all?
e-
Is this how it all ends?
It might be over. Oh no, it still says live in the corner.
No, it's still live.
See us out. See us out. Do your and
Okay,
now.
well, listen. Here. If you could just real quick before we head out, if you go to my Instagram page, I think also on Facebook, but there's also Richmond.com. We are up for the nomination round for the best local morning radio show in Virginia by the Richmond Times-Dispatch. Last year, we were 3rd place in this competition. But you click on it, Richmond Times-Dispatch. Last year, we were 3rd place. This is the nomination round. Nomination round goes to May 29th. 1 nomination per email. I'm going to say that again, 1 nomination per email. You will have to put in some information. We're going to scroll down, go to entertainment, click on entertainment, and then, you scroll down, entertainment, click, then you bless you. And then you're going to scroll down to bless you again. Best local morning radio show, all the way down. It's underneath best band, I believe. Let's see here. It's down. You just keep on. It's underneath.
Sam, you have to ask us a question before you go.
Well, I will ask you a question. My question is, have you nominated Newsman yet? Hashtag nominee Newsman.
Okay.
That's what you need to be
call to
doing
action right there.
because we have until May 29th. And there's a whole list of people right there already. It's going to ask you to register. They're not going to spam you. Trust me, we've done this the last couple of years. They're not going to do that. It's try to protect the integrity of the vote, but you can use multiple emails, maybe probably some fake names. But there it is, Sam Newsman, and you want to sit there and you can use that and click on that. And the top 5 shows go to the voting round that will be in July. And so, like I said, last year we made the top 5, and then we made the top 3. So hopefully this year we want to be able to make the top 5 again, and we can do that with your help. Setting the standard, raising the bar, playing Saturday morning cartoons every single Saturday morning, WDCE 90.1 FM, 9 a.m. to noon.
So to get there, I can click through your Instagram to get to that little voting panel, or do I? It was
it's on the bio. Correct. It's on the bio.
Link. It's in the bio. Perfect.
It is in the bio. And like I said, it's the only award-winning radio show dedicated to the magic and nostalgia of Saturday morning, hosted by me, a real media puppet. From the most trusted puppet in media, reporting since Roswell, I'm Sam Newsman.
That's polished. Man's got it down. The science. That should be a lesson to us all, right? He's smooth with it.
Made it.
All right, guys. I'm off.
One love, y'all. I made the end. I'm happy.
Bernie,
Everyone
nice
have a blessed day.
Glad you could catch the tail end here. You're here not with bells on, but with lights on.
Well, with no Andreas, it just keeps going on and on and on. So it's the show that never ends.
Never know. It's a fleeting reality. It's just the 3.